free Golden Eagles for War Thunder. Download the app in the description below.
Oh man, I just had to do that. I just had to do that. Everyone's like, oh, he's the new Orange Doom, Orange Doom 2.0, Ego Boy 2.0. So you know what? Fuck it. I'm going to take his intro too. Anyway, ladies and gents, we are going to be flying the MB5. Yes, that's right. It's going to be painful. It's going to be very painful, very long and painful. It is a terrible plane. And there is one main reason for that. It can't get energy. It takes a very long time for the MB5 to get any sort of energy. The climb rate is subpar. It has really good speed in a straight line. But, and it turns well above about 400 kilometers. As soon as you dip below 400, it's pretty tough. And one of the things that this plane needs to do is it needs to climb. Now, climbing for the MB5 is optimal around, I believe, 400 kilometers or 300 kilometers. So you're going to have to dip below your optimal combat speed in order to get to your optimal climb speed. Now, this is a bit of a bad thing, considering that this plane doesn't really climb well at all. It means that you are going to have to spend lots of time climbing and lots of time at your unoptimal speed, at a speed that is just too low for you to be combat effective. And so what this does is it puts you at a massive disadvantage, which a lot of players struggle with, and rightly so. This plane, I believe, used to be at the same battle rating as the P-47M, back when the P-47M had an airspawn, and now at 5.7, the P-47M is still more competitive than the MB5. Now, this is a real simple fix, and I'll get to that in a moment, but I'm just going to show you roughly how I climb. Now, I'm climbing at a high speed. The ideal is about 310 kilometers per hour, as far as I'm aware. It seems to work the best for me, even if it isn't the most aggressive possible or the best climb rate possible or whatever. It seems to work the best for me. And that's what I tend to stick with, about 310 kilometers per hour. And I try and get to around 6,000 meters. Now, this isn't the MB5's optimal altitude. That is 8,000 meters, because the engine is designed for high altitude. And you know what? It's probably on peacetime settings as well. For those of you who don't know what a peacetime setting is, now the British, when they operated their Griffin engines, particularly, they had a couple of settings, basically, as far as I'm aware, to improve the longevity of the engine and to not put it under as much stress, where it would exert less horsepower and other characteristics, I guess, just so that they could use the engine more over a longer period of time. That is my understanding of it. If anyone's got a better understanding of it, I suppose, do let me know in the comments. But yes, the peacetime settings essentially mean less power. And that, in War Thunder, is not a good thing, considering that the plane may actually only last 8 minutes. Whereas in real life, you want the plane to last months, if not years. Now, here I am above the clouds. Luckily, the cloud cover is kind of thin. It's quite widespread, but it isn't very thick altitude-wise. And you can see there's a THAT 152 off to my left and a Dornier 335 off to my right. And I'm in a little bit of a pickle because I'm below them. That's not really good. That is not good at all, simply because it is just such a disadvantage to be below a THAT 152. And there we go, a Focke-Wulf 190 at my altitude as well. So things are starting to look hairy. I mean, that could, for all I know, be a D13. And the D13 is, without a doubt, in my opinion, the best Focke-Wulf itself. I do think the THAT 152H is a lot better, but the D13 is still extremely strong and perhaps a really strong counter to the MB5, because the MB5 can go fast, but the D13 can dive, the D13 can roll, and the D13 has better flaps. I believe the D13 has takeoff flaps as well. The MB5 only gets landing flaps, and that's really sad for me, because I like to, get in there, turn fight a little bit, energy fight if I can, and the MB5 is sort of restricted to boom and zoom, but at the same time, not really. It's a really, really unconventional plane, because you want to keep it fast, but it can also turn. So playing it a little bit somewhere between, say, a Tempest, a Wyvern, and a P-51H is about right. You see, the plane is built for speed, and it does reach speeds around the level of the Wyvern. It can sit around 500 and something kilometers per hour on the deck, and I have done it. It does take a little bit of time to sort of build up to that speed, but you can do it. Although in the meantime, your team is probably going to get slaughtered, and you're better off climbing. And that's one of the hard things about the MB5. You've got to spend so much time climbing that it really isn't that great a plane. Unless you're flying it in a 4-man squad, or like I am with a squad mate, it is a really difficult plane to get used to. And I think I would go as far as to consider it to be a bad premium. The guns are okay. The plane itself, in terms of its performance, are somewhat decent. But for the most part, the MB5 is not really that great a plane. And the reason being is because you just have to spend so much time being passive. That's really, really bad if, one, you want to win, and two, if you want to grind. If you want to win, you need to be active in the battle. You need to constantly be a value to your team instead of a hindrance or a detriment. And one of the things that climbing off to the side does is it makes you a detriment to your team. Because you're not in the battle, you're not baiting, you're not killing something, you're not working to lower someone else's energy state. You're simply there, off climbing, gaining your own personal advantage, whilst the rest of your team suffers. And whilst that might be a good thing for you, gaining your altitude and gaining your energy, your team is dying. And your teammates at the end of the day are probably more valuable than your altitude. Because a D13 can climb up to 6,000 meters in less than 10 minutes. In fact, it can climb up to almost 10,000 meters in 10 minutes. And your altitude advantage is gone after 10. So you've got to really weigh up what your team is doing. You've got to weigh up how your team is performing. And you've got to act accordingly. And that's really tough. That's a real art. And that's something that an experienced pilot like me even has trouble with. So if you're if you're not an experienced pilot, then one of the things that you should probably consider is not buying this thing. It is a cool looking plane though. But if I were to go with anything to grind out the British tree, I would probably pick one of the tier 3 planes, or the Wyvern or something like that, and then Talisman the Meteor Mark III. That would be my go-to to grind out the British tree. Maybe the Wyvern and the Meteor Mark III. Although I have never played the Wyvern, so don't take my word as gospel. It's just that from what I've seen and what I've played with people that I know well and that I know are really, really good at the game, they seem to enjoy the Wyvern. And when they played it, I actually played with him. We both had a lot of fun sort of playing Wyvern and support, and I think that was really cool. But let's go back to the game here. You can see I'm burning up. My engine is on fire. I've gotten 2 kills, and I'm now chasing a 152, and he's actually breaking away from me. Now, this guy in particular, he's playing extremely passively, and I'm just eyeing off that G56, make sure he's going down. If not, he's going to have to pull up. He's going to have to bleed a lot of speed to not die, basically. And then I can swoop in and take that kill. But he does, in fact, go down. That leaves me with 3 kills. So I keep chasing this guy. And it's really, really frustrating to have a passive player. And my engine's burning up. But, I mean, I've got the fuel for it. So I thought I might as well pursue. And I'll see if I can climb. See if I can get some energy. See if I can, take him out. And you can see there, the oil is absolutely on fire. I don't remember any other plane that sort of burns up like this, apart from maybe the MiG-15 BIS back in the day. But my God, you have to run this thing at something like 93% throttle just so you don't overheat on a map like Sicily. It's really, really frustrating because you're losing a lot of engine power. And that's something that I need in order to keep up with this TAR 152. Now, this guy's probably going to be passive for a lot longer, and it's, again, really, really frustrating. But notice how my MB5 actually can't keep up with him unless I'm wepping for a long time, and he's off-wep. Now, I don't know if he's spaded or if he's stock, but let's assume both are spaded. Then that sort of makes sense, where the TAR 152, and I believe he's a TAR 152H, can outrun you, but on the same card, if it's a TAR 152H, then he can also turn with me. And he has lower speed handling down pat, where as I have to keep to 450 plus with this guy so that he's compressing and that I'm not. And that's a real problem. I think the MB5 really lacks certain characteristics with it. It turns okay at high speed. It doesn't turn well at low speed because of those clipped wings. It rolls reasonably well, but it overheats and it needs to be at high altitude to perform. So I find that really, really upsetting, being a player that likes to play a little bit aggressively. So you have to play super passively. You have to play extremely passively in a team such as the British that have, at this battle rating, Griffin Spitfires, the LF Mark 9, the Tempest, the Typhoon, and other planes that you can afford to play reasonably aggressively or in a balanced manner. So whilst your team goes and gets all the kills, you have to sit and climb. And this is a real problem for the MB5. And again, one of the things that makes it a really, really unfavorable premium. One of the things that I propose for the MB5 is simply an altitude spawn. That is literally all the MB5 will need. Because it is so fast in a straight line, because it is so fast at altitude, it can almost beat a P-47M at altitude. That's impressive. That's very impressive. It can probably beat a D-13 at altitude. And that's extremely impressive because the D-13 is literally built for high altitude fighting and high altitude speed. One of the things that the MB5 would really do well with is an airspawn. 1500 meters like the TAR 152, and you will have a much nicer plane. Simply because it doesn't have to spend so long climbing, it doesn't have to spend so long getting energy. The guns are still okay. They're Mark II or Mark V Hispanos, and they're on props, which is not a bad thing. You just need a bit of gun time. Now, just a quick return to the gameplay. This guy has gone to the edge of the map, and one of the things that happens is, after a certain time, you get returned to the battlefield. Now, what I've done is I have just climbed a little bit, and so when we get the restart, the airspawn, I respawn at his altitude. But he was able to dive away from me, and so I decided to disengage and decide to head towards my base. Now, on the way back to base, I did see this TAR 152H, and I decided to engage, pull a quick hit on, no dice, and then I go immediately for a dive. Because I know if he's going to follow me, then the P-47 and the P-51 behind him can clean him up. Now, obviously he doesn't do that, so I continue in a straight line. I can't wep. I just can't wep, which is really, really frustrating, and he's barely getting away from me. Now I managed to catch him because he does some evasive maneuvers from that P-47. And now I think I'm on the front foot. I'm closing pretty quick, and whilst Hispanos are not as good as MG151s, you can still try and range with them. And this guy, I'm trying to range with him, but I can hear someone behind me, and there we go. There's the TAR 152, and it is in fact a C. So yes, that does explain why he was running away from me. Although I do believe at higher altitudes, the TAR 152H will run away from you, which is even more impressive. Now, this particular individual seems to be rather passive, and it's really frustrating. I just don't like passive players. People who play like that are nothing short of a bitch, to be honest. If you just keep boom and zooming from 5k and you run from an MB5 like that, I don't really have much respect for you. I'm sorry, but it doesn't really matter how good you think you are. If you're going to play like that, you might as well not play at all. You gotta have some risk, and you've got to push your plane to the edge instead of sort of playing safe. I mean, it's still valid, but it's nowhere near as honourable, I would say. Now, this Taiwan 52H here, however, he's playing extremely aggressively. I think a little bit too aggressively. The Taiwan 52H actually can turn really well, perhaps even better than the MB5 at this speed. So you got to consider yourself. You got to consider sort of what you're doing. He's diving away. He's probably trying to bait me for the Taiwan 52C, and I need to get this kill. So I'm trying really hard. I'm burning my engine. He goes into a turn, but I think I managed to miss. Yes, that's right, because I'm a great shot. Taiwan 52 comes in. I duck underneath his guns. I've bled a little bit of energy. I get a hit, and I get a crit on him. And there goes a big chunk of his wing and a flap or something like that, and he'll go down eventually. Now, this Taiwan 52 comes in, and I'm low on energy. Again, I'm below my combat speed, and he manages to get a kill on me. He's, well, you know, I deserved it because I bled all my energy, and that Taiwan 52H baited me well. But, yeah, this guy ends up crashing. So, you know, we're not at any big loss. I think we still won the match, and pretty fruitfully, you know, pretty solidly. And it's all because of the MB5, which goes to show that it's not that great a plane, but you can still carry. Anyway, ladies and gents, take care, and I'll catch you next time.